Um, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's such a pleasure to have you joining us again for this second Eco-Iftar in this series of 4 that we have planned this month of Ramadan. Let me introduce myself. My name is Lamisa Fiz. As Manuel pointed out, I'm the operations manager at the MCB, the Muslim Council of Britain, which is the UK's largest Muslim umbrella body. We have members from schools to large charities to professional networks to mosques and other Muslim institutions. And so what we do is advocate and represent and capacity build for them. You will have seen, especially in the last 6 weeks during the COVID response period, we've had a lot of statements out, advice, toolkits. We've been trying to coordinate with the Muslim community as much as possible to try and prepare them during this time and help them safeguard themselves. So during Ramadan as well, we've prepared a Ramadan toolkit and we're going with the hashtag Ramadan at home and trying to encourage everyone to stay safe in isolation. And this is part of the reason why we've ended up organizing these virtual iftars, because we realize we're all at home. Many of us on our own, many of us not able to gather in the same ways that we might usually. And so actually, you know, the MCB has been working on green issues for a while now. We've partnered with various people like IFES. Mark spoke last week and kicked off our series. We also, you know, have partnered with Friends of the Earth. We've partnered with Keep Britain Tidy previously. And last year, Hassan Judy, who is our Deputy Secretary General, who's also on this call, was instrumental in highlighting some of the work that mosques are doing across the UK in terms of trying to go plastic free. We had an event with City Circle at the, when was that, earlier this year. We were looking at green mosques. And we're trying to do a lot more of that as we go. And so we had this plan with IFES and Friends of the Earth to do a plastic-free or single-use plastic-free Ramadan this year, and try and encourage mosques and institutions to take part in that. But unfortunately, the COVID pandemic has got us in its grip. And so we were unable to follow through on the campaign as we wanted to. And so instead we now are doing these virtual eco-iftars, planning to keep the conversation flowing, give us a space to discuss sustainability, ethical and green issues, because we're all passionate about them as a group of wonderful volunteers, which includes Muntasir and Manuel and Bernardo and Shahab, who is also on the call. And we want to make sure that we can share that interest and that passion with others and hopefully get new ideas and feel inspired together to do more. So we do plan to do more post-Ramadan. And I hope that you will join us in that. So please stay engaged. There's a lot of resources coming out on the MCB pages, whether that's Twitter, Instagram, or website, or Facebook. Keep an eye on those. And if you have time, Ramadan is a great time to give. And we at the MCB would also love to ask you for your support in helping us to do more to safeguard Muslim communities. And so please feel free to donate to us as well. I'll leave a little link in the chat, and should you be able to, then we welcome your donations as well. Thank you so much. Feel free to ask questions throughout. I will pass it straight back to Manuel, and thank you for giving me the time.
Yeah, thank you, Lamis. I couldn't do it better. Then we can shortly introduce Dr. Lutfi Radwan, who established with his family Willowbrook Farms 17 years ago after an academic career in the field of geography. As a lecturer at Oxford University, his research expertise is in soil and water management, and also worked as a consultant with UNDP, spending time in West Africa. He and his family established Willowbrook Organic Farm to put into practice the principles of Islamic environmentalism. The farm's mission includes educating the broader community and periodically run open days to invite the public to explore where the food comes from. Then looks very, very exciting this evening. Then please, Dr. Lutfi, feel free to do your intervention. You have approximately 18 minutes, 18, 20 minutes maximum.
Okay, well, assalamu alaikum, and thank you for asking me to contribute. I won't talk for very long because I think it'd be more useful to have a discussion where people can ask questions. And I won't talk about the farm. You can go on our website and look at that. And inshallah, I hope by the end of this summer, people will be able to pay a visit and come and see us and learn about what we're doing. I wanted just maybe to stress a few points very briefly before we start. And I'd start by saying, what is the Islamic approach to the environment? Why does the environment matter? Why should we care for the environment? You could ask that question. And it very much depends whether you place man at the center or whether you place God at the center of your actions. The Western world, Western philosophies have drawn us very much into this concept of individual liberty, that the individual is in the driving seat, in a sense. There's a utilitarian concept of nature, that it's there for our benefit. And that there's no really strong notion of communal responsibility. We've seen the gross inequalities that we see in the world. I think one statistic, a current one in 2019, 10% of the population own 85% of the resources. So let alone the lack of regard for the environment, there's very little regard for our global neighbors, and let alone future generations. It's a development model based very much on an absolute right to continuous growth, the extraction of surplus, whether that's from vulnerable populations or from finite resources. I just quote one ayah from the Quran, which it's worth mentioning and worth pondering on. A lot of this is nothing to do with capitalism, it's to do with greed, and it's to do with an age-old desire to accumulate resources. In the Quran, we're told, they would say to you that trade is like usury or interest, but God has made trade beneficial, but has forbidden the charging of interest. One of these economic systems engenders abuse, debt slavery, resource degradation, the extraction of surplus on a fixed rate, whereas the other promotes a shared risk, or resource management. So one model raises the individual rights, whereas the other raises a collective responsibility. One sees humans as supreme, and the other sees God as supreme. And I think very much the Islamic ethic comes clearly from the latter. As humans, we're not really separate from nature, we're part of nature. Allah says, do not those who reject faith see that the heavens and the earth were joined together as one unit of creation before we exploded them into existence, and we made all living things of water? Will they not then believe? And in another verse, there is not an animal that lives on the earth, nor a being that flies, but forms part of communities like unto yourselves. Nothing have we omitted from the book, and all shall be gathered to their Lord in the end. So we all come from the same carbon-based life form. We all live by cause and effect. We all live in an interdependent world. What distinguishes mankind is not our just very existence, but the free will and the moral choice that comes with it. And with that comes responsibility. And in the words of Spider-Man's uncle, with great power comes great responsibility. So this concept of khilafah, this representative, this steward on earth, as Allah says, whosoever subverts this trust, this khilafah, does so to the harm of his own soul. And more importantly, Allah reminds us what that trust is. The heavens he has raised, and he has set therein the balance. So do not exceed the limits in that balance, and establish that balance in a just manner, and do not destroy that balance. So it really is this role of Khalifa, seeking harmony in nature, that's the real test and the real spiritual journey of each individual. And the journey is one to return to the garden. So the metaphor of the garden is very important. What we try and stress on the farm generally when people visit us, and if you read on our webpage, that people should ponder at least three things. And this is Ramadan, where the first one is very relevant. The food you eat, where it comes from, the waste that you're producing, and the energy that you're consuming. And there's a very telling ayah in the Quran, which I'm sure all of you know. Pollution has appeared on the land and sea because of what man's hands have wrought, so that he may let them taste something of that which they have earned, and in order that they would turn back in repentance. Well, Ramadan is certainly a time to focus on where our food comes from and how it's produced, but particularly pertinent because of the corona pandemic. The coronavirus is an example with its origins firmly in our own hands. It's not something that just came from out there in the environment. If we look at the evolution of the COVID-19, it's transferred, we believe, from bats to pangolin to human, a zoonotic virus that can transfer between species. but one that bats have held for thousands of years without exhibiting symptoms. All of us, we hold many viruses. The average human being has at least 15 viruses in our body. We have 30 types of bacteria. These are naturally in us, but only when we're stressed do they actually mount an immune response against these viruses. And then we start to shed those viruses and it becomes possible to jump species barriers. The stress of caged wild animals in China in this case, or the stress of various species in habitats that are being destroyed, or the stress of animals kept in factory farming. These are three routes by which increasingly we're finding zoonotic viruses are transferring from animals to humans. The avian flu, which transferred from pigs to humans in 1918, was one of the oldest. This transferred from large pig herds to humans and ended resulting in 50 to 100 million deaths. In 1957, the Asian flu pandemic, again an avian influenza virus, which transferred from chickens to pigs, resulted in 4 million deaths. And the 2009 H1N1 swine flu epidemic killed almost 300,000. So these are not really new. And whilst the deaths amongst the humans are shocking, the animal deaths, of course, are much, much higher. In China, 30,000 farms have been shut down and millions of animals since February have been culled or left to die to clear the virus from the caged populations. Similarly with African swine fever, millions upon millions of pigs in China and across Southeast Asia have been culled. And even now, I just read a report today in America, due to the lockdown, one of the side effects of the lockdown is the mass culling of over 2 million chickens and 700,000 pigs because of the closing of abattoirs. So the factory farm conditions do not allow any other route out for these animals. So in fact, the route that they're choosing is to cull them. So I think it's really important that we actually understand where the virus came from. They can occur naturally, they can evolve, but they're most likely to come from stressed immune systems in either caged wild animal birds or in the factory farming conditions that we see across the world, producing nearly all of the food that we consume. So there's a lot of talk about changing to the new normal. Have we really changed? Have we really recognized the problems? Are we really looking at the sort of changes we need to make? I'll just finish with a small quote from an incredible book called The Trial of the Animals. Some of you might know. It was written by an intellectual society known as Ikhwan al-Safa in 9th century Baghdad. And it's a parable for a trial of mankind because of our treatment of the animals. The animals went to one of the jinn and said, could you please adjudicate? And could you look at the abuse and maltreatment that humans mete out to us as animals? And after looking at the evidence for and against presented by different animals and how they're treated by the humans, he comes to his conclusion and says, by the grace of God, I find myself in favor of the animals, for they have been sorely tested and abused. And he looks toward mankind and says, you need to change. And if you do not, should you err, the animals will begin to disappear one by one forever from the face of the earth, and the air in your settlements and fortresses will become dangerous to breathe, and the seasons will be reversed and your climates turned on end, and the animals you eat will bring sickness and death upon you, and you will no longer rule the earth. This can be reversed, but humans have to realize the extent of their cruelty. Now, this was written back in the 9th century, but it's extremely pertinent, I think, for us now to look at, to actually ask the questions of what is it to be a Muslim? What is our relationship to the global consumerism we find amongst us? What is our relationship to greed? And we really use this time to focus on our relationship with nature, to look at our resource use and consider what changes we can make. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I know that's quite harsh, but I think hopefully this will open a useful discussion. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Lutfi, thank you so much. It's very, very interesting, your intervention, and big source of reflections. Then I hope that among the people who are following the event, that there is somebody who has some question for you. Is there anybody ready with a question for Dr. Lutfi?
Feel free to raise a hand, but I know there's some questions in the chat box. I'll just read those out for you, Manuel.
Yeah.
So the first question was, in terms of living a halal, ecological and Mayan existence, is there any society now in the 21st century which sets a good example for us to follow? And that was Hassan who shared that. Dr. Lutfi, do you want to answer that one first?
Yes, I mean, we live in a global world. We are all very much affected and connected to the way we live, and it's difficult to disentangle. So the simple answer would be no. We've moved away from a lot of aspects of community and culture which are important. If you look at the way that we consume resources, we have no agency in the production of our food. We have no agency in the production of our items of clothing. A lot of things are being done in our name because we're passive consumers. And I think that applies to everyone. There are certainly initiatives and there are things being done. And I don't want this to seem as if it's insurmountable. I think the important thing is we were born in this time period. We need to address within our own lives what we can. So we don't need to go to the top of a mountain and live in isolation. Not everyone needs to go and start a farm, but we need to look at what we can do to connect with people who are moving in the right direction. And I think that's quite a radical agenda. I think we need to understand that a lot of the givens that we had accepted blindly, we need to now really sort of shake that tree a little bit and say, well, you know, there's a lot actually that is fundamentally wrong with our existence. And the first thing is making your niyyah, changing the way that you address these things.
Yeah, thank you so much. The second question I would give you is, Adnan has asked, do you advise us to live off-grid? If so, how do we do this and what are the natural steps?
I think it's got to be small steps. Those of you that can, I mean, I made the leap. We didn't have a lot of resources. We sold, we had a very modest ex-council house that we sold, and it was like the Jack and the Beanstalk story. We bought a little piece of land with the proceeds of that, and we started with a few chickens, but it's taken a long time. So if anyone wants to go completely down that route and really throw themselves at the mercy of Allah, yes, why not? I wouldn't discourage anyone. But for the majority of us, I think we really need to make those changes in our lives that can lead us some of the way. And the more important thing is developing that community. I think as long as you're hooked into the sort of the system that takes you to your supermarkets and to your Lidl and Primark and all of the sort of consumer items that we're buying, you need to address that. So you need to say, well, look, where can I change? Where can I start to shop? Where can I actually find from a farmer's market food that is produced naturally? How can I reduce my own consumption of electricity? How can I get back to a more healthy lifestyle in terms of transportation? I think that's more realistic for most people. But someone who wants to go off grid, send me an email. We can certainly advise you on the sort of things you'd have to be looking at doing.
Okay, a question here from Saba. She said, is there any likelihood of us getting provenance of the meat in our local butchers? Very few organic halal meat delivery services are available. Is the route of meat provision needs to change?
Absolutely. Now, I don't know if you really sort of grappled with some of the things I was trying to say there, but I think everyone needs to do their research on factory farming. Halal food is not really halal in that full sense. The Quran always puts the word halal and tayyib together. But 99.9% of the food that we're consuming is factory farmed. I think if anyone knew really how factory farmed food was produced, they wouldn't really want to eat it. And you can't know the provenance of it. I mean, no one really knows that. So yes, there is a lack of good quality meat available. So the first thing is eat a lot less meat. We're all slaves to consuming chicken. That seems to be the most popular meat, the go-to meat for everyone. But it's the least sustainable meat. It's the most easily produced in factory farm conditions, and that's why it's flooding the market. But actually it's the least sustainable. So if you want to try and be more sustainable, I think focus on having a little bit more red meat in your diet and eating the meat once a week, twice a week if that's difficult for you, but reduce your consumption and include a lot more vegetables. But it goes beyond that. There's a lot of trendy sort of veganism going on, but they're not making the same point that a lot of vegetable production uses inordinate amounts of pesticides and herbicides. So there are so many complex issues to address. The more that you can find out where your food comes from, as I say, farmers markets exist. There are a lot of producers wherever you live, even in the big cities. Around those big cities, there are a lot of small farms that are trying to produce naturally produced food. They don't have to be Muslims if we're talking about vegetables. So there's plenty that you can do.
So before I just come to the next question, it is 8 o'clock, and so we must clap for the NHS and our carers and our frontline workers. So if everybody wants to join me in a little clap, we didn't do this properly last week, but I'm encouraging us all to do so now. Feel free to do it on mute. I might do mine on mute just so I don't interfere with the sound.
Who's got the fire? The fun is there.
So yes, you could feel free to mute or unmute yourself. I just thought it was important to do that because particularly during these times, it's important that we take part in the community initiatives that are out there and acknowledge the people who are working so hard for us so that we can stay safe. But on that note, sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Lutfi. Would you like to continue, or shall I ask you another question?
Yeah, no, that's fine. If you ask another question, if anyone has.
Yeah. Manuel, by the way, I'm not sure if you can read the chat at the same time because I know you're on your phone. So are you happy for me to continue?
Yes, no, me also, I have one question for Dr. Lutfi. And I wanted to ask, what about the cut down of plastic in his farm, and if he's standing to join a point that it can be completely plastic free?
Yes, we're making our best efforts. We've converted our packaging to recyclable non-plastic trays for our produce. We have a policy on the farm of recycling as much as we can, and we try and refuse packaging, but a lot of items that come in delivered, as you know, everything is wrapped in plastic. But on the farm itself, we have a strict composting and recycling policy. It's very important that everyone looks at as an entirety at their way of life and really tries to reduce as much as they can. I'm all for this idea of taking any packaging back to your local supermarket, save it for the week, shove it in a bag and return it back to the supermarket to let them know that you're not happy that they're still sending out things to you with so much packaging. It's infuriating when you receive a small item and you take like 20 layers off it to get to whatever's inside.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, has everybody else lost?
So yes, we're doing what we can.
Can everyone else see Dr. Lutfi's video, or has it gone frozen?
I think it's frozen.
Yeah.
But the audio is, oh no,
Can
I
you
can
see me?
I can hear Dr. Lutfi. I can't.
Can you see me now?
I don't see Dr. Lutfi now. I don't see you.
No, sorry.
Ah.
It's okay. We can continue on.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you fine.
Yes.
So what we'll do is we'll continue speaking and fiddle with it in the meantime. There were a couple more questions from the chat.
That's fine. Yeah.
I think one was following up from a previous comment that you made around chicken and red meat. The question was, is beef better in terms of animal welfare, though not for the environment?
Well, this is a deeper question really of mixed farming. It's probably a bit too short a time to go into, but there are a lot of benefits of having animals and vegetables grown in the same space. And we do a lot of recycling of the poo that comes, the manures that come out of the animals is used on our vegetables. So I think there are a lot of pluses of that type of farming. Probably the most sustainable in the UK environment would be sheep. Pretty much they graze on grass. They need almost zero supplementary feeding. There are no chemicals used in rearing meat, the sheep, unless you're one of these more commercial farms where they rely a lot on certain pesticides to keep seasonal problems away. So really you can rear sheep in an almost zero impact environment. So certainly grazing, my point was that grazing is preferable to the really high intensity rearing of chicken.
Yeah. One of our participants, Harris, is asking.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
We also see you now.
Which is brilliant.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yes, so another participant was asking if there is anything similar to Willowbrook up in Yorkshire, because they were looking to source halal and tayyib meat there.
Well, we're hoping that there will be more people. I do know someone that has started rearing chicken near Manchester, a guy called Mohammed Kashaf, who produces a small amounts locally. If you email us, we can try and give you his details. There are probably about 3 or 4 people starting up similar enterprises that we've heard of. Most people have come to us and asked a few questions. It's something we want to see a lot more of, and we're hoping that it will grow. So yeah, email me and I can let you know of anyone locally that could possibly help.
And how do you think we can encourage more people to do that sort of an entrepreneurial, enterprising gesture of like living and setting up a farm? Or do you think it's more a matter of convincing people who already have farms to sort of change the way that they're working?
I think Muslims need to get involved in farming. You know, we're sort of, as a sort of second, third generation immigrant community in many respects. We've not taken up that. We're obviously much more well represented in the medical profession and other areas. So I think it is really important. This younger generation, I see a lot of people that come to the farm are really interested, and I think we'll see good things over the next few years. A lot of people are wanting to do that. It is really important that we play our part. But I think more fundamental, and it's something that my wife has been saying that we should really try and stress to everyone in Ramadan particularly, is stop eating the factory farmed food. You know, we are aware of where it comes from. We're aware of the condition. The old argument that you take your Muslim brothers' claim that it's halal as acceptable. It might be technically or in the jurisprudence that might be acceptable, but ethically, I think we have to accept that we know this is factory farmed food. We know there are many negative aspects. So I think it needs to come from the consumer side. When we stop buying that type of meat, we'll find that actually there'll be more opportunities for people to start producing ethically and halal produced alternatives.
And I think the next question from Hattie sort of ties into that. She's asked, a lot of the shops mentioned are places where people maybe can't afford, so maybe they can't afford to buy organic meat or ethically produced meat. And I know this is the case with, when people talk about vegetables and organic vegetables as well. What is your advice for people who are maybe students or on low incomes?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. I mean, on the one hand, I want to be a bit antagonistic and say, if you couldn't buy fresh water and you could buy beer more cheaply, would you buy the beer to quench your thirst? I mean, on one level, if something is wrong, we've got to change it. We have to find ways to change it. But I understand, obviously, that's a little bit facetious. So I'm going to give you the proper answer. The proper answer is that there are ways to get around the cost of food. There are cheaper ways of preparing meals, and it doesn't have to actually be very expensive to eat well. Fortunately, vegetables are reasonably cheap, and even organic vegetables. You can make a decent meal out of organic vegetables. And we have a culture within our different ethnicities in the UK. Muslim cultures often have a lot of very good vegetarian diets. So reducing the amount of meat that you're consuming, and even in the type of meat you consume, we have a lot of customers who don't have a very high income. They will buy things from us like the cheaper cuts. They'll often even buy things like a chicken carcass, which can be then boiled and make an extremely nutritious soup or a stew, or even other cheaper parts of the lamb or the beef cuts, which are not so expensive, and not making the meat the centerpiece of your meal. So whilst I'm sympathetic, I understand obviously eating natural food is more expensive than eating rubbish. I'm not sure where we go with this argument, and if anyone else has any ideas, please tell me, because if something is bad for you, it's bad for the environment, it's verging on haram in terms of the production methods, what are we supposed to say to people? Well, just buy it because it's cheap.
Yeah. I mean, I think you gave us some balanced argument there around eating more vegetables and maybe cutting down the amount of meat that you eat. I think there's also been a change as we become more affluent societies to not use everything. There used to be a time when we used to use the whole of the animal, the bones, everything. We'd make, boil them away, we'd chew them away. But we don't do that as much. We sort of tend to throw it away, which is more as well, right?
So, and if I could add to that, if you look at more traditional societies, traditionally, even in UK society, this is nothing about religion, people traditionally spent 30 to 40% of their income on food. Now the amount we spend on food is reduced to something like 5 or 10% of our income. We spend a lot more on consumable items, electronic items, cars, entertainment. So we actually do have some money for those things, and we've undervalued food so much. And I think that needs to be redressed.
So just quickly, there was, I think Monster might have posted it. He was asking you to define the difference between halal and tayyib, or the ideas of halal and tayyib.
Yes. Okay, well, the two always come together. And in fact, when the Quran mentions it, it says, they ask you what is halal, say to them what is halal is what is tayyib. So in a sense, tayyib defines halal. But if you want to look at the words, the actual meaning of the words, halal means that which is permissible. So legalistically, it is the type of meat that is permissible. So you'd have to look at the conditions of how it's slaughtered, the conditions of how it's reared, etc. Tayyib is a much more specific meaning, which is something which is wholesome, natural, pure, and you could even use the word organic. I mean, again, I could say at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, they only ever ate organically because that was the only way that you could produce. So the word halal is a sort of legalistic term for that which is permissible, whereas tayyib is a very clear statement that the food should be nutritious, organic, healthy, natural, and pure.
Yeah. Hattie, did you want to say something because your mic is on?
No, but didn't realise it was. Sorry.
No problem whatsoever. I just wanted to check maybe you had a question or something. You're welcome to do so.
No, thank you.
Okay, so I think there was another question which sort of mirrored what Hassan had asked earlier in terms of, is there any society now in the 21st century that sets a good example for us to follow in terms of living halal, ecological, and a tayyib existence? But I feel like you answered that already, Dr. Lutfi, and your answer was kind of no.
I can just make a simple point on that. There are many communities at the fringes, and this is the sad thing, they're at the fringes. I was reading a report on the Bill Gates Foundation are funding a massive program for encouraging agriculture across Africa. And sadly, it's encouraging commercialization of agriculture. It's encouraging the use of a limited number of seeds, Monsanto sourced, for example. So the big agrochemical companies, the big agro seed companies are getting involved. And a lot of money is being pushed into shifting farming into a more efficient and more industrial type of farming. And the sad reality is those on the edge of production are actually those closest to the forms of sustainable production we need to go back to. So there is a real challenge to actually save the diversity of seeds that are being planted, the diversity of communities that grow. And remember, this is not just about the produce, but it's the way you produce. It's the type of community interactions, the type of societies that we can sustain that are sustainably farming, but also sustainable communities where there's not exploitation, industrial production, but there's actually farming communities of families, people getting involved, working together, and actually facing those challenges.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that was the last question that was posted. Manuel, I think you had some other questions that we had shared earlier.
Yes, one question that I was just thinking now is, while the doctor was speaking, is if he thinks that this kind of initiative could be easily contagious or replicable, if it is possible to have in the future a web of halal farm like the one he's managing, or if it will be too difficult to organize.
Yeah,
I think it would be nice to hear about some of the challenges you think.
I think this is, that's something that, well, yeah, it is difficult. I mean, it's taken a lot of hard work. You've got to have a very dedicated family, or at least one that didn't know that they could leave the house. We all worked together and managed to build what we built, with a lot of hard work. So there are many points we would have turned back, and Allah blessed us, alhamdulillah, we didn't face financial ruin or issues. And we do live in a society where we're more affluent, so our customers have been able to support us. So the hope is that this is something that will grow. I've heard of initiatives outside the UK in places in Morocco and other parts of the world, Indonesia, where people are trying to do similar things. We've had contact from a farm in India. So yeah, the hope is it grows, but I think the help that people really need to give is from the consumer side. And farming aside, it's not the only issue. This is really not the only issue facing us. Yes, our food production is crucial, but there are so many other issues. As a community, Muslims need to become more, for want of a better word, radicalized, to understand that there are challenges we have to face head on. We need to really be associating with groups and organizations who are pushing for radical change. This is not something that you can tamper around the edges with. In a way, it's been beautiful to see some of the good impacts of the corona lockdown. And you've probably all seen these funny videos of goats walking into Welsh villages and strange things happening. But there's been a report I was reading from Stanford University on the number of lives that have been prolonged due to the decrease in air pollution in major cities around the world. So there is another possibility. There are things that we can see glimmers of even in this dark time, which I think we need to be working towards. So it's food, yes, but it's also the whole rest of our lives. We really need to get organized and campaign and get out there and be doing many different things.
And I think on that note, Ramadan is a great time to form new habits. And I think Fatima, sorry I missed your question. She asked, what are your recommendations for some things that we can do in our own backyard?
Yeah. At the end of the day, if you find yourself on the last day, the Prophet tells us, with a seed in your hand, you should plant it. So we should be optimistic. We should be trying to make changes, even if they seem futile. So certainly with your family, get out there and plant what you can, whether it's just a few herbs and vegetables, whether you can get a communal allotment locally, wherever you're living, see if that's something you could do with 2 or 3 families. And you'll find that the joy you get from working together, from communing, getting out on the land, actually getting your hands dirty, letting your children put on their wellies and plant a few seeds. So those things you should certainly be doing. But as I said, also the wider networks of working with across faith communities, with Friends of the Earth, with Extinction Rebellion, various groups that are campaigning for the right sort of change. It's a community thing. You benefit even if we don't change. Ultimately, Allah is in control of what happens, but what we can change is within ourselves and within our communities.
So I'm just keeping an eye on the time. I realize we're getting up to the.
I think Montasa had a question. He had a hand up very diligently for a while.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to take a couple of questions, and then if he's got his hand up visually, he should have his hand up on here. But I don't know why that hasn't shown me. Sorry, Montasa.
I'm old-fashioned. I want to do it the old-fashioned way. So I'm very pleased because discussion has inspired a lot of questions and a lot of ideas. And I wanted to draw everyone's attention that the chat, in our little chat, I'm a little not too good with Zoom, but I noticed that this chat has a wealth of resources. And all of us have been diligently sharing questions and resources and links. So there are loads of resources just in this little chat of ours. And I also wanted to draw attention to the fact that this will be recorded and oh, is there an audio problem?
It's just a little bit, Muntasir, but we can still understand you.
So this will be recorded, and individuals, anyone who chooses to, can review it from the start. So I know Usman he mentioned that he had missed a bit of the beginning, but you know, you'll be able to read, watch it later. And also some of our volunteers, Manuel and Bernardo and myself and Shahab, will be doing some writing, and we will blog and write about some of these discussions and thoughts and ideas. So, you know, do keep in touch with this. I think we're building a kind of a network or a community here. So it would be nice to continue this momentum. And of course, I'd like to also ask everyone, are there some changes that you've been making this Ramadan? Are there some ways that you've been incorporating some of these ideas about veganism or vegetarianism into your diets or into your iftar or into your suhoor this year, or outside of Ramadan even?
And just on the back of, please feel free to type that in the chat, or just, you know, show us a hand. Maybe not visually like Muntasir, because I might not see it, but via Zoom, that would be helpful. But just in terms of all the resources that you're sharing, like Muntasir saying, we're going to take note of them. But we are also trying to launch a sustainability site on the MCB website, where Muntasir and others will be sharing some of these blogs, but we will also be sharing these resources. And we're hoping that this will continue the momentum into the future. And we will share, hopefully by next week, an email address where you can send us things as well that have to do with sustainability and sustainable living, so that we can continue to grow this at the MCB and really start to engage on this a lot more than we have been able to do it in the past, because we're very aware how switched on the community is and how much we're craving that outlet. So I hope that this will be really the beginning, as Muntasir has said. Should you have any other questions, please feel free to post them as well. But I did notice, Usman, you had asked another question of Dr. Lutfi, which was, if you could sum up a single one-line message to Muslim society, what would it be?
In a way, I think I would just quote the very simple hadith, ad-din mu'amala. For me, it encapsulates everything. Your religion is your social interaction. Yeah, at the heart of your religion is the way that you interact. That's the way you interact as a community, the way you interact with the environment. If we think about that, and we think about really what people now call the individuation, the way that we're now so separated and isolated, even though we're living in large communities, I think it's really important that we try and rebuild that meaningful structure of community which engages.
Brilliant, thank you so much. I think there's about 4 minutes until the Adhan, at least here in London. I'm happy to give us a little bit of time for reflection. I want to apologize if anyone's question wasn't answered. And just on the notes in the chat, again, we will be saving that information, but we're also working closely with IFES and with Friends of the Earth, and we have definitely been in touch with Dr. Fazlun Khalid, for instance, and we will continue to do so. So again, please continue to stay in touch, have this conversation. We'll give time for dua now, and we will play the adhan, and hopefully we can just I don't know if everyone is ready with their dates. I am, but we will stay on here and inshallah open our fast together and give everybody the opportunity to do that. Manuel, if you have any final thoughts before we do so.
No, but in conclusion, I'd like just to thank the Muslim Council of Britain, of course, our partners, and our volunteers, then Mutansi, Bernardo, Shahab, Hanan. And yes, I also can repeat what you told before, then to all the people who are listening, who are with us now, please do engage with our accounts. Then the main one is mcb.org.uk. And for donation, please visit www.launchgood.com/MCB. And lastly, yes, I would be delighted to invite everybody the next week at similar time. We will have an event, inshallah, with Julian Corby from Friends of the Heart. That from my side, I think I have finished.
Okay, thank you so much again from myself as well. Please keep an eye on our Instagram and on our Twitter, etc. We will try and share as much as we can with you. I was failing to share my screen with you. Sorry about that, but I wanted to share the graphic of the upcoming week, but thank you for doing that as well, Manuel. Feel free to take this time to make a dua, and then I will play the adhan as soon as it is time. But if you need to drop off, then please feel free to do so as well.
By the way, I'm guessing not everyone's in London. Are there anyone is anyone in the north of England? Are there anyone in Scotland, Northern Ireland? Are a lot of people from London?
I'm west of London, so usually about 1 or 2 minutes later than central London.
Okay.
I've got it set for 26 minutes past, but obviously we can go either side of that, so don't let me delay your fast if you are earlier.
I'll quickly, just, informally, just improvisationally, I'll just say that it was lovely. Thanks, Dr. Lutfi, for joining us, and thanks everyone for joining us. And as I usually, I'm just messing with the mute button, but I guess if everyone would like to stay on for a few minutes as we break fast, if you'd like to share a dua, if you'd like to share what you're having for iftar, it would be nice. I myself am going to have some dates and some fruit. And I make dua that God gives us more understanding and about our diet and about our faith, of course, and that he continues to give us sustenance, and he continues to give us clean water. Of course, we're very lucky to have some of these things. Not everyone does. And if anyone else would like to share anything else at this point.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going to play the adhan.
I'll say my goodbye.
Okay, Dr. Lutfi, it's great to have you.
May Allah accept all of your fasts. Inshallah. And for those of you who are still fasting, another half an hour, however long it might be, thank you for opening our fasts with us. I'll be ending the meeting now, but thank you very much again. It was such a lively session, and we really appreciate Dr. Lutfi for taking time to join us. And please do join us next week, where it will be Julian Kirby, who is the head campaigner on plastics for Friends of the Earth, and they're a key part of the work that we've been doing, and we've been partnering with them and IFES on this, and inshallah we can continue to drive this forward. So do join us next week, and stay in touch in the meantime, and we will continue to share as MCB any resources, the new webpage that's going up, etc. So thank you again. Have a great iftar. Assalamu alaikum.